Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Utility Safety and Environment Committee meeting for Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the June 5th, 2024 Utilities Committee meeting minutes. May I get a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Armstrong, moved by Mr. Oswald, second by Mr. Armstrong. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is the matter of a contract for the Lowell Street Sanitary Sewer Extension Improvement Project. Engineer Schneider.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we would like to go out to bid for the Lowell Street Sanitary Sewer Extension Improvement Project. This is a project that would extend the sewers on Lowell Street from the Paper Street, Schilling Drive, to essentially Church of the Open Door. We would install a gravity sewer to accommodate the flows in that area. There's a number of properties over there that have expressed interest as far as development from what we hear, as well as the Church of the Open Door is expanding, and they're looking to get off of their current system, which is a package plant. They basically treat their own sewage before they discharge it into a ditch, stream, or into the stormwater once it goes through the process. So what we're looking to do is extend the sanitary sewer down Lowell Street. Our intent is to, once the project would be complete and we figure out all the costs and things of that nature, we would go back then and come back to council to establish fees, to provide connection fees for the various people that would connect to it in the future. So when a development goes in there, not only do they have a location to tie into now, but then we would recoup our costs in regards to what we spent, so.
The estimated cost on this is $1.7 million?
Yes, that includes a 10% contingency right now. We're still currently finishing the design on that in-house, so until we bid it out, we don't know what the final cost will be. But
Okay, thank you. Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Madam Chair. Mr. Snyder, so, excuse me, is this going to still extend, you said to the Church of the Open Door, but is this going to where the development comes out on 113, Yost Development, and we were talking about the right-of-way and all that, and then to be able to go across the street to Nelson Stud or whatever that is now, is this going to all get incorporated into this?
it would be a portion of what, more so toward the Nelson Stud portion, not the Yost. Yost is already tying to a sanitary sewer that goes over to a lift station behind West Ridge Green. This would give us gravity sewer all the way up to Church of the Open Door and give future development over in that area. They would have to extend sewer across 113 and whatnot. Most of that's in the township and whatnot. But yeah, it would provide more access for those type of properties over there if they choose to come in. But this would be a start to get us to Nelson Stud if we end up going that far later on. And Nelson Stud required a pump station over there anyways, just to get it over on that side of the 113.
Mr. Oswald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm not familiar with Schilling Drive.
It's a paper street, I believe.
It's a paper street. It's roughly between the Kokosing construction and the old GM plant. It's
Okay.
halfway between there.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, before any more discussion happens, I'm going to recuse myself due to a apparent conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Snyder.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not on this committee. To Engineer Schneider, are the properties from Murray Ridge to Open Door, are those in the township or the city, or does it zigzag?
It's a little bit of both. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. So would the residents be able to tie into this if they were in the city?
Currently, yes, the residents who are in the city would definitely be allowed to tie into it. Residents who are outside the city, council currently has an ordinance on place that would require them to annex into the city if they choose to tie into it. I believe we have, as part of the Elyria Township, that's Elyria Township over there, a JED agreement with them for various areas that would require annexation versus areas that, or I should say not require annexation, but they would not contest annexation in areas where they do contest. So I believe this is one of those areas where they would not contest And so they would be essentially required to come to the city.
Not to cut you off, engineer, but there may or may not be required annexation depending on where the property is located and what the effect of the respective JED or CETA agreements that we have with Elyria Township are. We'd have to analyze it on a case-by-case basis. They would be able to connect either as part of the city or under those agreements, provided certain conditions are met. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Mr. Schneider, Church of the Open Door, I noticed that they're expanding to the east. To the east.
South, more so. Well, it's kind of like in the middle of their complexes where they're expanding, from what I've heard. I haven't seen them any plans yet, but that's what I've heard.
Okay. And do you have any time frame when they're going to start doing that?
I do not,
Okay. Thank you.
unfortunately.
Mrs. Zawarka?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not on this committee, but two things. Schilling Drive is about across the street from where the Church of the Nazarene is. It's right in through there. It's across from there. It's a paper street. It's a paper street, but it's right there on 113. I have a separate question about this sanitary sewer extension, and does this have anything to do with the water problem that was over there by the Shibley Company there at Lowell Street? Has that all been figured out? Has that happened again where they had a water pressure issue?
No, this is a sanitary sewer. That was
Right, I understand
domestic
that.
water.
No,
There's
I-
nothing to, Shibley is already tied into our sewers.
Okay, so that's not going to affect them at all?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Oswald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I always thought when we provide sanitary, they automatically had to tie in. If they got a septic system right now, they don't get the choice, I always thought. Now, has that changed or?
Yeah.
So if you got 10 houses down the road and you're saying that 3 of them want to tie in, the rest of them don't, that's going to be okay? The reason that we have 10 instead of 3 is offsetting the cost of our, the infrastructure. That if we have 10 people paying into it on a monthly basis, that's how we recoup our money for the infrastructure. So what you're saying is they don't have to, even if they're in the city?
There are certain criteria that the health department requires in order to force people to tie in. The city doesn't, we can't force them to tie in, that's the health department. And it comes down to, and I can't remember, the metrics are accessibility and there's something else. And if they're not allowed to tie in, because the city won't allow them to tie in, then they're not required to tie in. So but what you're asking is a health department more so question, whether or not who would be required and not required. They can grant extensions, especially to people who have newer septic tanks, things of that nature, that have maintained them, things of that. But that's on the health department. We don't have the authority of that.
Mr. Brunick?
The engineer explained it pretty well. The definition of accessible includes whether or not they're regulatorily allowed to tie into our sewer. They have to be in our sewer district, and we have to have laws that permit them to do so. If we don't, then it's not accessible, and they can't be forced.
Are there any other questions for Engineer Snyder on this? Mr. Brunick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Engineer Schneider, this is just for construction services. This has already been engineered and designed, is that correct?
This is to go out for bid for construction.
When is your proposed date to go out for bid?
I was hoping in August, so an emergency would,
In August?
yes.
Yeah, the next meeting's in August. You're going to need an emergency clause on this, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of the Lowell Street Sanitary Sewer Extension Improvement Project, and this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and award a contract for said project. Emergency clause requested. Can I get a motion, please?
So move. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Davis, second by Mr. Armstrong. Are there any other questions?
Question.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is the matter of levying the final assessments for the 2023 sidewalk program. Engineer Schneider.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So last year, we had a few houses that actually participated in the sidewalk program to have their, some sidewalk replaced. There was actually 6 of them, only, I believe, 5 of them are being assessed because one actually paid cash as part of their, they didn't want to be assessed, they just wanted somebody to, wanted the city to contract it out, I guess, for them. But, so before you, as part of the referral, you should have a list of the 5 residents to assess for these portion.
I have it, thank you. This was open to anyone in the city that wanted to take advantage of it?
Yes, yes, it is.
And did you have a good response on?
It's a case by case, and there were people that were eager, for sure. Some people who asked questions and then ended up backing out. But wanted, from my understanding, were that they had it done.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Engineer Davis?
Chair, my question is, you know, we have sidewalks in the city, and if you're in the census, you're not required to pay. So are any of these in the census area that they wouldn't be required to pay?
I think you're referring to is the block grant program, which typically in the block grant area, and block grant funds are through council to do sidewalks in areas. We do those areas for free if you're in those areas. But the way the ordinances are written still are the property owner, regardless of where you are, is required to maintain their sidewalks, curbs, tree lawns, aprons, things of that nature. So yes, areas where sidewalks are done for free, all done through the block grant program. Then during the block grant program that council elects, traditionally pick roughly the area.
So, Madam Chair, once again, so if I came and applied for having my sidewalk repair, would you tell me if I were in that area? In that block grant census, would you tell me that, hey, you're in this census area with the block grant, you wouldn't have to pay?
I'll tell you, but maybe not everyone else, but community development, actually, they control that area. They have the more refined map of who is in, who's not in, because it is pretty complicated, and I don't know if I have an updated map on that at this time. It's something that I believe Ashley was looking into to get an updated map, but we could go that way, but at the same time, you're gambling, is council going to approve funding for the block grant area for sidewalks? And you're still limited to what I would say the requirements of, as far as the engineering department going out and just saying, this one's bad, but this is okay, we can leave this because it's good, because we really like to stretch our dollars for the sidewalk program to make sure that sidewalks are flat, not necessarily just all brand new just because a homeowner wants it brand new. They want their sidewalk brand new, and it's in good shape still, what we we categorize as being good, we don't necessarily are going to replace it for no reason. Hope I didn't confuse you with that, but.
Yeah. Mrs. Zawarka?
Thank you. Not on the committee, but follow-up question to Mrs. Davis's question. Is there a point person for sidewalks? So if I call City Hall and I say, I have a question about sidewalks, where do I get directed?
Engineering and/or building department can go out and take a look at sidewalks to see if they meet the criteria of our ordinances. As far as this program is administered through the engineering office.
So it may be that the person who's taking that initial call knows where to direct them.
I think so. Are there any other questions for Engineer Snyder? Do you need an emergency clause on this, Mr. Snyder?
No, because we just need to make sure it's in before September 9th to the county.
Very good. Seeing no other questions, I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of leveling final assessments for the 2023 sidewalk program, and this is a resolution authorizing final assessment for said program to be certified to the Lorraine County Auditor's Office. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
I apologize. Who moved?
I will move it.
And who seconded? I'm sorry, you guys got to speak up. It was moved by Mr. Oswald and second by Mr. Armstrong. Is there any additional discussion?
Question.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is the matter of additional easements to existing easements for Windward Sewer and Gulf Road Pump Station Project. Engineer Schneider.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So over at Windward, which is on the north side up by the wastewater treatment plant, we have a siphon that crosses from, and pump station that cross from the Abbey Road area through the ravine area over to the Gulf Road, right over there by the wastewater treatment plant. And where it travels, we currently have an easement there, but but we need to make the easement bigger because we're going to be the intent is to, we have a project that we have to do there. We have flooding, backups, things of that nature. We have a siphon that's in very poor condition that we need to replace before it fails catastrophically. So as part of the design right now, we need to get 2 easements from 2 of the property owners who abut the current easement. And the 2 easements, what we're looking for is, one of them is going to cost the city roughly $500 or $775, and the other easement that we're asking for for as well is going to cost $2,200 in order to get these easements from the property owners. So I would ask that, these are the figures that have been presented to them, and one of them is accepted, the other one is just hesitant on this for other issues, not dollar-wise, but in regards to trees and things of that nature. So, but we were looking to get a council's approval to accept these 2 new easements with the law director's, I would say, assistance on this as far as their approvals as well. But that's essentially what it's about.
Mr. Brunig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure I understand, and I know we spoke earlier, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this for legislation. We have easements already. We are expanding the geographical area of those easements. So basically, we're amending the existing easements to increase the square footage or the linear feet or whatever it is. But
Correct.
we're amending the existing easements to expand them.
Correct, because we can't construct within the easement because it's already existing, the facilities that we need to replace.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Snyder? Seeing none, I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of additional easements for the Windward Siphon and Gulf Road Pump Station Project, and this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into additional easement agreements for the said project. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Davis, second by Mr. Armstrong. Any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is the matter of an agreement with ODOT for the replacement of signs on State Route 57. Engineer Schneider.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the typical ODOT, anytime they're doing work within the city proper, even though it's on a road that they may or may not maintain, they always ask for permission from the city to be in the right-of-way and to construct some improvements. They're actually looking to replace various signage along State Route 57 from roughly the Cleveland Street up to the Turnpike is their limits of their construction. So this is no cost to the city. They did provide their own legislative ordinances, consent legislation for us to, which they've done in the past as well, that the law director's office will review. But essentially, they're looking to do this work next year, and they just want our approval.
Thank you. Mr. Brunick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be clear, because the consent legislation, I did glance through it earlier, seems to indicate that no funds are required from the city unless we make changes, but then it also puts the maintenance obligations on us, so I assume there's a cost to that, but I also assume it's probably in your budget for these things normally. I just want to make sure that, you know, A, this doesn't have to go to Finance Committee as well, and B, you don't have to have a set of, you know, an amount appropriated to
Yes.
take the work.
Through you, Madam Chairman. The State Route 57, all the signs along there are already our maintenance responsibility. So them doing this for us is helping us, actually. So, but you are correct, yes, we do have to maintain it, but we have to maintain it anyways right now, but they're doing it for us.
But you already do it, so it's already in your budget to maintain them, once they're in.
We have in our budget to maintain
Right.
some signs
Right, so you're not
for this year.
expanding the scope of your budget
No.
by doing this?
No,
Okay,
no,
thank
not
you.
at all.
Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Madam Chair. So that part of maintaining, a car hits that sign and it knocks it over. Who takes care of it?
The city,
ODOT or us?
the city is responsible for all signage maintenance, if guardrails are hit, cutting the grass, plowing the snow, you name it, crack sealing, striping, those are just common maintenance items that they require for us to do. And that's unfortunately, years ago it was different, but it changed over the years, unfortunately, and now we're stuck with it. And so, yes, we maintain the signs if they get hit.
So is it our guys that repair it, or do they have to come out and be the ones to repair it?
No,
If
no,
it's
no.
a sign.
Oh, actually fix it. Sometimes we can fix them, depending on how big they are. The bigger ones, sometimes you need a crane, which our guys do have, a little jib on the truck that they can do some of this stuff themselves. Sometimes we contract it out. It's a little bit of both, but the big ones are typically, we hire a contractor to do them because they're a little more difficult.
Because
Mr. Oswald?
Because I was told back when the guardrails get hit, we're not allowed to repair or fix guardrails. They have to be the ones, or only certain companies are allowed to do guardrails.
Yes and no. We are allowed to do it, but there's a liability associated with guardrails, and guardrails are a safety item that you don't want to take on some of those liabilities if you don't do them right.
No.
So there are only a few contractors in the state that do it, and they are a specialized type of thing. So traditionally, we don't do them, but we have done some here and there. I'm not saying we don't at all, but it's one of those things you don't want to do a lot of if you don't have to, especially if it's a big area, so.
Say a driver, Mr. Snyder, slides off the road and he knocks down a sign. He gets cited for that and then fined and has to pay for that sign. Is that not correct?
As long as you find out who he is, you could try
Oh,
to.
if you could find
You
out.
could go after their insurance.
Right.
I know in the past, I know people have tried. I don't know what we've gotten out of those people, but that's not my department.
Gotcha. Are there any, Mr. Stewart?
Madam Chair, so it says replacing of signs, is that all the signs in that corridor, or just the ones, I mean? and
It's
I
my
guess-
understanding they're only replacing certain signs, and it's more, I think it's more of the state signs, the ones that call out 57, 20, things of that nature. They're not doing them all, is my understanding, so.
And back to your point in regards to the city's responsibility, I know there was one that was just, this is beyond the scope of this project, but it was just north of Broad Street on the west side of the road where they either got hit or by either us or by vehicle of some sort, or what about these wind damage where they're snapped off? That's still our responsibility?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Zaworka?
Are they changing their style of their signs, or are they going to look different? I just wondered. I mean, people start to call and say, why do we have new signs here? Why is the city wasting money on them?
No.
If they're the same ones, fine. Just curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I don't have the exact prints. They haven't sent us, they're in the early phases. We'll see something probably, 6 months to a year from now. But typically what you have is most signs have a reflective coating on there, and at nighttime, you can see it when your headlights hit it. Well, over time, it wears, and you lose you lose your reflectivity, and that's why they're being replaced largely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of an agreement with ODOT to replace signs on State Route 57 from the Ohio Turnpike to Cleveland Street. And this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with ODOT for replacement of said signs at no cost to the city. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved?
Moved by Mr. Oswald, second by Mrs. Davis. Is
But
there
the-
any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Snyder.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the matter of entering into a new contract with the city of Amherst for the sale of water. Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The contract with Amherst expires in 2025. We wanted to be proactive and get this done now. The Safety Service Director and I met with the Mayor of Amherst. We drew up a tentative agreement. It's with legal now, and we're ready to go.
Okay.
There'll be another, I believe, 20-year contract. Eric?
Mr. Bruning?
Whatever you sent me, Sam,
Yeah.
I haven't actually broken it down into a contract form yet, so.
There'll be another 20-year contract with 5-year renewal periods afterwards, similar to what's in place now.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Are there any questions for Mr. Jacobs? Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Madam Chair, are we charging them more money this time?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's automatic increases, 2% increase yearly starting, I believe, in 2028.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of a contract with the city of Amherst for the sale of water, and this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a new contract with Amherst for the sale of water. Emergency clause is requested. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved?
Moved by Mr. Oswald, second by Mr. Armstrong. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is the matter of applying for assistance from the Ohio EPA for determining material used in water service lines and for technical assistance with the water service, with the service line plan. Engineer Jacobs. You're not an engineer, I apologize, sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair, right before I went on vacation in June, I received an email from the EPA saying they were going to offer free assistance to cities to identify service line material in the city and help us with our lead service line plan. Based on other cities in the state, we're way ahead of the curve. We started a number of years ago with our service line replacement programs and what we've been doing the past 5 or 6 years. But this is free help, and pretty much we're doing everything in-house now. If we can get some free technical assistance, I thought it'd be good for the city.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Bruning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this a grant, an interest-free loan, a little of both?
They are going to have people come to Elyria and help us with our plan. We're not paying anyone, there's no money going back and forth.
Not a loan, it's not a grant.
It's not a loan, it's not a grant, it's
Personnel being loans.
personnel, technical assistance.
We like free.
I like free, I just want to know how to draft it, so, okay. I'll
Thank
figure
you.
it out. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Jacobs? Seeing none, I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of applying for assistance from the Ohio EPA for determining the unknown material in water service lines and for technical assistance with service line, with lead service line plans and programs. And this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for and accept, if offered, the said assistance from the Ohio EPA. Emergency clauses requested. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Davis, second by Mr. Stewart. Any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. The next item on the agenda is the matter of the citywide parking restriction on the hydrant side of city-dedicated streets. Mrs. Zerwicka, did you want to speak first, or Officer Vaughn? Go right
Through you.
ahead.
Yeah, I'll start through you. And while I'm starting, if the clerk could get the attachment that was supposed to be with the referral on the streets, you were going to do that second page?
Run on the screen?
Yes, that didn't get distributed, Colleen. I don't have it in mine unless others have it.
I do not.
You were going to add it. In your email back to me, you said you would add it. So let me just give a little bit of background. I've received a number of calls complaining about parking on both sides of the street. And I did a little research, and Officer Vargas here tonight to talk just briefly about police action year-to-date and previous years on ticketing cars that are parked on the hydrant side that are interrupting the flow of traffic. From my own observation, in Ward 3, there are a number of streets that are curved. On the curved streets, when you've got parking on both sides, it's extremely difficult to get through. Cars are stopping to let another car go north, south, east, or west. Now, I'm not here to talk about how close to a hydrant, or there's rules, there's an ordinance that talks about that. But what I'd like council to do is to ponder this, and maybe we talk again in August. There are a number of communities that have done this, and Colleen's getting the list. Just recently, Lorraine did it, North Ridgeville, Mentor, Whitcliffe, Middleburg Heights. There's probably 10 or 12 in Northeast Ohio that have absolutely eliminated all parking on the hydrant side of the street. I think it would be helpful for us to get a map. I've asked the engineer, and we will try to see if we can come up with a map that shows the streets and where the hydrants are on the streets, so that we can determine. Now, there's going to be some streets where parking is a problem no matter what. This is not going to change streets where there's no parking at all now. So the college streets, Stanford, Cornell, Harvard, 100 and 200 and 300 blocks of those streets, for the most part, there's no parking allowed now. That's not going to change anything. But the two examples, well, three examples, Carroll Lane between Highland and South Abbey, the parking on both sides, and there's a curve there. Kent Circle, Mrs. Russo was here the other night. There was parking on both sides of Kent Circle, and the cars couldn't get up and down Kent Circle. Michigan, I got a call from a gentleman in the 200 block of Michigan. The 200 block of Michigan has a curve. The 100 block starts at University, and it goes to Park Avenue. And it's a curve. It's a pretty curvy street. Cars are parking on both sides. They can't see to get out of their driveways. So that's kind of before you and for you to ponder, and Colleen's going to pass out the list of the cities that I've found so far. What I've asked Officer Varga to do is take a look at those and to maybe reach out to some of those communities and come back in August and say, hey, this was a big idea, this was a great idea, this was a crappy idea, and then we can talk some more about it, so.
If I
Yeah.
may, we are not looking for any legislation tonight, okay?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And one thing that I just want to clear up, and I think that Director Bruning would back up, this does not mean we have to put a sign on every street. We would put a sign at the beginning of the jurisdictions of the community that says, in Elyria, no parking on the hydrant side, or parking is prohibited on the hydrant side of the street. We don't have to put a sign on every street. It's kind of like the solicitor's permit ordinance and some of the other ordinances that one notice is enough. I believe that's the case. And so if you could double check that
Yeah,
when we have
I'm
further.
not prepared to speak on that
I
tonight,
understand.
but
I
mean,
understand.
that doesn't sound unreasonable if that's the case.
I think that that's how we handle other generic, sorry, I keep doing that, generic restrictions. So, thank you.
Just give me 1 minute. I think the concern that I have is that we're asking for this to be citywide. There are many residents in the city of Elyria that don't have driveways. So and I get it, they don't have driveways, so they do have to park on the street. Parking on both sides of the streets is allowed. If we disallow parking on the hydrant side, will that affect people who have mailboxes on the street? Is the hydrant always on the same side as the mailboxes? Mr. Armstrong?
I don't
Through
think
you,
so.
Madam Chair, I believe the hydrants are on both sides. They're just spread out differently.
So my concern is, if somebody's parking in front of your mailbox, you don't get mail, number one, and they can't, so yeah, this needs to be an ongoing conversation, I think. Mr. Snyder?
Through you, Madam Chair, a couple of my just questions or concerns that maybe engineering may be able to explain is, on some of the streets in the Heights, like she had said, like Stanford, Cornell, and all of those, you can't park, but a lot of people use Garford Park, Sherman as alternates to park, but I don't know, would you have to change the direction of the parking if, I don't know what side Sherman Park and Garford have the hydrants on. So that would be one case, and then I don't know what we do in a cul-de-sac situation, because it's a circle, and the hydrant doesn't always sit on the right or the left side of the street.
Right.
Could be smack dab in the middle, or a little to the left or a little to the right. And then downtown, what do we do with downtown? Because we have fire hydrants downtown, and we park on the hydrant side of the street downtown. So those are three of my concerns would be, some of the streets, and I don't know if like St. Jude's area has the same as like the Heights area where you have like Greeley. Do people use Greeley because they can't park on? And I don't think any of the St. Jude area, I don't think they have any no parking streets over there. But I know in the Heights, my concern would be the parallels. So it would be downtown, the cul-de-sacs, and then the streets where there's no parking for the streets that people use to park on.
I'm going to take one more question, then we're going to let Mr. Vargas speak. Go ahead, Mr. Oswald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's a good idea to look into, but maybe it'd be helpful with that map if they just give us for our ward, because I don't know your streets as well as you know your ward. So if each one of us in our ward can look at that map where the hydrants are, where the mailbox, we could have good input. Well, we don't have no problems on our side. So that may be helpful in trying, because I can't look, I'm not over everybody's streets, but just a suggestion. Thank you.
And I know that in the past, and Mr. Snyder could correct me if I'm wrong, if the residents wanted to eliminate parking on one side of the street, they had to get a petition from all of the residents, and we went from there. So to say citywide, I'm not okay with that. So I kept interrupting. Please go right ahead.
No, thank
And
you, Madam
welcome.
Chair. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So I was asked to be here tonight on behalf of Chief Pelko. I did some quick numbers, just looking up our general ordinance for unlawful parking, where the fire hydrant violation would come into play. For 2024, from the first of the year till now, we've issued 249 tickets. However, it doesn't break it down if it's parked in front of the fire hydrant. It just kind of gives us a blanket number. Back in '23, we wrote 193. Obviously, the increase of our traffic unit has
Sure.
increased our numbers for parking tickets in unlawful areas. A couple of questions that I had with Councilwoman Soroka, it was mainly just, how we have those streets where some are not parking on the hydrant side. I know Antioch, for one. I grew up there. On the north side of the street, there's no parking on that side of the street. There's hydrants on that side of the street. How many do we have in there? So I think it's a good idea, as Council Member Oswald had said, get maybe that breakdown, see where those streets are in effect. I do know that there are issues where, you know, you have parking on both sides, and it does make it a little bit more difficult to get down the road. But yeah, I'll be more than happy to reach out to these communities and the departments and see what works, how it, you know, played out, and we go from there.
Thank you. Are there, Mrs. Zerwaka?
If I could, yeah, I would appreciate that because, I mean, looking at the list that are restricting parking, there are a gazillion cul-de-sacs in Avon Lake. And Hudson and Rocky River would have old streets as well because it's a little bit older community. Cleveland Heights would have older streets that are narrow because there's a lot of older homes in there. So it'd be interesting, I think, if we could find out how they did it and how it worked, if it did work or not, or what their problems have been. And that would just be a simple call to the police departments to kind of pick their brain a little bit. And I will take as a follow-up to see if we can't get a map of some sort. I did mention it to the engineer. We'll put our heads together and see. I'm not asking for any action. I just want you to think about it. I do think we should just gather as much information as we can and see if it's something that we can at least attempt to.
Mr. Armstrong?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would like to get the engineer's opinion on this tonight, so I can have more to think about.
Mr. Snyder?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would have concern with the blanket ordinance as well. There's areas out there where, for instance, if you're on a curve, if we are removing parking from a street, we tendency have to remove the parking from the inside of the curb so you can see around as cars approach better, things of that nature. We have areas where the hydrant is on one side, and there's not as many houses on that side, and it makes more sense to have parking on that side. It is one of the main criteria we look at when we do remove parking from a street, or if we're going to decide which side of the street has parking, which side doesn't. It is one of the main criteria we do look at, which side is the hydrants on first? Does it make sense? If the amount of parking is relatively the same, things of that nature, then yes, we remove it from that side, opposed to the other side. But a blanket, it would be tough in some areas, I would say, but it is the main criteria that we use a lot of times.
Thank you. Safety Service Director Pianowski?
Yes, thank you. Through you. I agree with Councilwoman Sawerka about reaching out to the other communities and kind of seeing how it works for them, but, and she did identify a couple of similarities, but I would also like to understand maybe how we're different, and what I mean by that is, how much does their community rely on street parking? How many of their residences have driveways? How much, I mean, if we have a different capacity for on-street parking, we might not be comparable because the need might be greater here than there. So I'd like to understand some of those comparables as well. Population, quite frankly. We have 54,000 residents. How many do they have in their communities, and how does that maybe impact? If we were to move forward with this, I have questions about, so just from a manpower standpoint, does that mean we have to go out and remove every no parking sign that currently exists? Because that could get complicated too. I was driving here this morning, and I was coming down Ohio Street near the Hickories, and I was thinking about this because Councilwoman Sawerka and I had talked about it previously, and I saw a fire hydrant, and I thought to myself, from there to the end of the street there, that was quite a ways. You could park, and I mean, you almost have to walk down and see, is there a fire hydrant here? So without any signage in that space, I could see a legitimate defense if somebody were to get ticketed of, the fire hydrant is, how far away is a fire hydrant from the next one? And what is our expectation on a resident to look for the fire hydrant to make sure they're parking on the right side of the street without any signage? So I think there's a lot to talk about, and I know that's what we're starting the conversation, but those are a couple of the things that I thought about that I throw out there for other people to think about too as you consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I
Mrs.
could
Zerwaka?
follow up on that, in, what number was that, Officer Varga? 553, you said?
It's ordinance 351.
351. It actually has 10 feet from the hydrant in the ordinance. So maybe it's simply, after we've gathered all this information, maybe we just increase that so that it's not as close to the fire hydrant. But, so I agree with you 100%. We do need to make sure it's apples to apples.
And how will we notify residents? We're just going to put one sign at the beginning of the street saying no parking, whatever it says, and they've been living there parking forever, and then all of a sudden they can't. So we have a lot to think through on this, I think. Mr. Snyder had his hand up, Mr. Oswald, then Mrs. Davis.
Through you, Madam Chair, this question's probably more directed to Engineer Schneider. Do you, and you could get back to us on this, but are the one-way streets, are the hydrants always on the opposite side of the parkings? Or do you not know the answer to that
I
question?
do not know.
Because that would really throw a curve into this.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you that. I mean, sometimes you have areas where you have hydrants on both sides of the street. Some areas, they're on one. It's,
Yeah.
every case is a little bit different.
With new developments, do you tend to have them all be on one side? Is that like a design perspective?
Traditionally, yes, but when you have curves and things of that nature, sometimes the developers, what's going to be cheapest for them to put less pipe in if they have to. They do shortcut that type of thing, but.
Thank you.
And then we don't even have the authority in some areas where rural water is technically.
Oh, yeah.
The purveyor of the water, so.
And again, if we do a blanket ban, if you will, as I said before, what about the people who have no parking, who have no choice but to park on the street? So wouldn't it be better to do it on a case-by-case basis like we do now? My thoughts. Mr. Oswald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it seems to me, ages ago, when I took my driver's training, they said.
Had cars
10
back then?
Back in the prehistoric age, they said 10 feet from the fire hydrant. Is that a state law or is that a city law? Can that be changed or is that a state?
I know it's in our ordinance. I didn't look up the state, but I'm pretty sure it would probably coincide with that. I could look it up and get back to
Would
you.
we be able to change something like that?
Mr. Bruning?
Probably. I mean, we do have home rule ability here. I mean, most of our criminal and traffic ordinances pretty much parallel the revised code. When they change at the revised code level, they change here. But we do have the ability in most cases to make them, more restrictive than the revised code if we want to do that. So we could potentially restrict that further by requiring a further distance from the hydrant. I don't think that would be, I mean, the alternative is you can ban it altogether. I mean, if you can ban it altogether, I'm not sure why we couldn't, ban it partially. That's not a good answer, but it's the best answer I can come up with at the moment.
Thank you. Mrs. Davis?
Through you, Madam Chair. And then when you do decide to do the ban, years ago, because I've been in my house 50-plus years, the fire hydrant was on the opposite side of the street when I moved there. Now it's on my side of the street. So it's changed in this time, and we still are parking on the same side of the street. You couldn't park on the opposite side anyway, but they moved the fire hydrant over. So, and where they're situated, they're so close to our driveways, you actually can't park. So when you park, you'll block my driveway somewhat to give that 10 feet from the fire hydrant. So it's some things we have to consider.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong?
Through you, Madam Chair, this might be a question to the engineer. Mr. Snyder, do you think there's streets like Ms. Worker named that might need to be revisited and remeasured? Because I know when the new stadium was built, Wood, Wayne, State all had to be revisited because of double parking, and it created a lot of safety hazards just in case. So do you think we need to go back and maybe measure some of these streets that are getting heavy complaints?
I will tell you that we have a lot of streets out there that don't comply to, essentially what it is the fire ordinances, or the fire rules. They're the ones that dictate how wide a street has to be in order to have parking and not have parking. In order to have parking on one side, it has to be greater than 26 feet. Anything less than 26 feet would have no parking. Well, we have a lot of old streets that we consider grandfathered in until the point that the people who live on those streets ask us and do the petition and have us, remove it, and then, once it's removed, until it meets the new standard, we don't put parking back. So there are a lot of streets that don't conform to, the typical requirements for parking. In order to have parking on two sides, you're supposed to be 32 feet, greater than 32 feet, is what the fire code says. So, we're more than happy to go out and do that, but I think you're gonna have a lot of upset residents as well, too, but that's for others to decide above me.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart?
Just a quick comment in regards to, just because there's a good discussion here in regards to that. But John, maybe as part of your assessment, maybe you can look at future projects that are going to be water replacements, the water line replacement, that they're going to think about considering moving those hydrants to another side based on that. I mean, I know that's a foreseeable future. You don't know where that's going to end up being, but as you're looking at your road programs and that, doing a self-evaluation of all of that, water, sewer, storm, where is that all going to fall?
Yeah, typically when we do a water main replacement, I guess, first of all, you have limited right-of-way. And the way the EPA rules are nowadays, we have to conform to the new EPA rules. We got to be 10 feet from a storm sewer, a sanitary sewer. And a lot of times it's difficult. And then we still have to be away from the existing water main in order to construct, or else you have other issues. So unfortunately, when we do, it's difficult as far as where we're going to put the water main. And if I put the water main on a certain side of the street where I actually have the room to put it, but the parking is off on the other side, now I have to run hydrants all the way across the road, which we truly do not like to do, but I mean, not to say we can't. It just leads to some confusion because typically the hydrants are nearer to the main. But if we have the option, I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
Would there be a cost to moving those hydrants?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, see? Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Snyder. Are there any other questions? Mrs. Zaworka?
Thank you. It's good discussion. I appreciate everybody's input. I think that we'll continue to look into how other communities have done it, where it's been successful, where it hasn't. We'll get some answers on mapping and, if we can get input from other communities, I think that would be helpful, because some may say, don't even go down this road, don't bother. The only issue in all of this is police department's too busy to be proactively going out to make sure that there's not cars parked within 10 feet. They're only going to do it if they respond to a call. And unfortunately, like Mrs. Russo said the other day, there could be a situation where there's a safety concern because there is a vehicle parked blocking a hydrant. So I appreciate everybody's input, and bring your questions and continue to think about it.
Thank you. This was a very good discussion, but just know, if we take away both sides parking, the residents are going to be very upset with us. Well, yeah, for the people that can park on both sides of the street, we take away one, the residents are going to be upset.
Through you, Madam Chair, just to answer your question, it is state law that it's 10 feet away from a fire hydrant as well, so just so you clarified that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for your time. Mrs. Zaworka, may we move this to pending items? We'll move it to pending items.
Oh, I can't make a motion.
Okay. Thank you. There's nothing else to come before this committee. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved?
Moved by Mr. Oswald, second by Mr. Armstrong. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Good night.
Questions?
You guys want to vote on that? Okay. Questions? Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Have a good night.